Hi, and a warm welcome to everyone who's joining us this evening. First of all, I want to apologise that we're a few minutes late in starting. Like a lot of you, we're experiencing trouble with our Wi-Fi, and our speaker, particularly Fraser, who's very important this evening, has been having trouble connecting. So apologies, and praying, fingers crossed, and that everything will continue to go well tonight. My name is Gladys, and this seminar is hosted by Dublin West Community Church. Some of you may already have come across us on meetup.com or Facebook. Now, this is the second in a series that we're doing entitled A Life Worth Living. And it's a series in which we aim to explore and sometimes challenge present-day cultural views on what it means to live both meaningful and flourishing lives. And tonight, as you saw as we started, we'll be looking at the very topical, A Life Worth Living in Lockdown, Is It Possible? But before we start, let me explain the format of the evening. There'll be a short talk on the subject. We'll then hear two personal stories, and then there'll be a Q&A panel. And this will be where you will all come in. I'll be putting any questions or comments you may have to this panel. Now, some questions have already started coming in, but if any of you, as you're listening to either what Fraser is saying or our two people who are sharing questions, just type them into Facebook or email them. I think there'll be an address below shown below. Okay, so that's out of the way. Let's get started properly. I want to introduce you to Fraser. He's Dr. Fraser Hosford. He's a part-time economist as well as a leader in the church. And again, just a reminder before I hand you over to Fraser, please don't be shy. Send in your questions and comments. Fraser, over to you.
Well, thank you, Gladys, and good evening, everyone. And my apologies too, it's my Wi-Fi. Blame Virgin, that's what I'm going to do later. So let's kick off. We have an interesting topic for this evening. Patrick Freyne does the television reviews in the Irish Times, and I really recommend his column. And last Friday, the week just gone, he was talking about Ireland's fittest family. And this is some of what he said. He was talking about how the programme is strangely compelling. And he said, perhaps it's because the first task the competing families undertake involves people clinging upside down to a log suspended across a mucky trench filled with filthy water. As metaphors for 2021 go, this isn't the worst. Are we not all, in a very real way, hanging on for dear life from a log suspended over a filthy trench? I quite like that. There's something about that image of a filthy trench, which is quite good for 2021. And that thought that we're hanging on for dear life is true for some of us. In lots of different ways, there's things that we're just not coping that well with. And there was a survey done by the CSO, which was on life satisfaction, on our well-being. And only 12% of people in Ireland said that their life satisfaction at the moment was high. Now, maybe that's just stating the obvious, but it's an enormous drop from nearly half just 2 years ago. We are sort of struggling here. And when you think about all the things that we've lost in lockdown, we can understand why. Now, the most obvious one is freedom. And that's what lockdown means. Lockdown means these restrictions that we're facing, lots of big things and little ordinary everyday things that we used to be able to do, we're not allowed to do at the moment. We are restricted. Just simple things like our 5K rule at the moment means we can't go anywhere we'd like to go in the city. We can't just go into a coffee shop and order something and sit down and relax. That is taken away from us. So freedom is pretty obvious. But I actually think that the biggest thing that we are missing, the key one, is community. Community. Like, because a lot of the restrictions actually revolve around that. Like the 5K limit means that I can't see my family. And lots of friends are outside the 5K limit as well. We're not allowed household visits. That's gone too. And even when we were in a lower lockdown, level 3 or something, there was social distancing. So even if you could see people, it wasn't quite the same. So community is a struggle. We have Zoom, which we're using this evening. And to be honest, I hadn't heard of it or used the platform until before March of last year. And it's great. I'm glad for it, but it's just not quite the same doing stuff virtually, is it? And so what this means when communities struggle is that we are lonely people at the moment. It's a pandemic of COVID, but it's leading to an epidemic of loneliness. Another survey by the CSO found that 25%, a quarter of us, are feeling lonely at the moment. A second one I found from 2 universities said actually it was at 40%. We are a lonely people. My second child is 10, and she has an art competition at school at the moment. And school, that's well, in my kitchen, but it's from the school. She's doing it in my kitchen, homeschooling. And it's to do something arty around what you're looking forward to in 2021. And what she's done so far is she's got 2 clay people, little small clay people the size of my hands, and they're both standing there with their arms out. And she's got a little heart which she's going to put in between, and it's going to be an image of 2 people desperate to hug because they love each other. We've lost that sense of touch, which is part of community. So community, I think, is the key. But there's another one that I've come across in the surveys I've checked out, and this is meaning. Meaning. It was a survey done by Amoric Research, and they found that 45% of people, that is nearly half, 1 in 2 of us, actually find that they are thinking more about questions like what is the meaning of life, more than they did before. And a third of people are actually having conversations around things like that. To me, that's sort of surprising. So we have freedom, community, and meaning. Now, I'm going to sort of take it from 2 angles this evening. One, maybe most obviously, is what we should do. What are the practical things, sort of daily wisdom of how we can live our lives to help us through these strange times? But I also first want to just dig a little bit deeper to see, what does living through these days teach us about a life worth living in general? So I want to use a quote from one of my favorite authors, an Australian guy who sort of looks at culture. His name's Mark Sayers, and he says that human beings need to have 3 tanks in life to live a fulfilling and satisfying life. We need a tank of freedom, a tank of community, and a tank of meaning. The 3 topics that we've already come across. And when he explains this, his point is that it's not just freedom that we need. And he says it like that because in the Western world, freedom is elevated above all the others. Freedom is sort of put as number 1. We have this core belief in the West that if you take human beings, take individuals, and set them free, let them do what they want, then they will flourish. And so freedom as a theme drips through our culture and through our land. You watch nearly anything from Hollywood, from war movies to thrillers, and from coming of age dramas, and freedom is a core theme. Now, freedom is really important. I mean, there's truth to this. And in the West, we have this love of freedom because our culture developed after fighting fascism in the Second World War and communism thereafter. And those battles were obviously good, so freedom's a good thing. But the problem is we don't just need freedom. We are happy when we're free, but actually we need those other things too. We need meaning in our lives, and we need deep relational connections. And Sayers' point is that in the West at the moment, not now specifically in lockdown, but in general, in where we are in history, in the West, we are drowning in freedom, but we're thirsty for meaning. And when you're in that state, adding more freedom in, when your freedom tank is already full, is not going to help you have a happier or more satisfying life. What we need to work on are the other 2 tanks where there's low reserves, meaning and community. So we need community as well as freedom. And I think that's been the key thing in the lockdown. The restrictions that have impacted the most are the ones that have deprived us of community. That's certainly what I feel. Sort of, when you finally do get to talk to someone, you feel like you've nothing to say because you haven't talked to anyone else before that. And also what COVID and the lockdown that are associated with it has taught us is that these 3 tanks, they compete with each other. They're in competition because the restrictions that we're feeling are decreasing our personal freedom for the sake of community, for the sake of others. We are restricting our movements to keep other people safe. And if you take the extreme example, and we've seen scenes in certain towns in America where people have been refusing to obey restrictions, refusing to wear a face mask, as an example. They're doing that because they're saying it's attacking their personal freedom. Now, whatever your view on that is, there's a tension there. These tanks can compete with each other. And when we get to trade-offs, when we consider our life and how we lead our life, we need to actually think carefully. Many of us don't really think about how we live our lives. We just get on and do it. But we need to think now. Who are we going to listen to? Where are we going to go for wisdom on balancing these trade-offs? So as well as freedom, we need community, but we also need meaning. That, for me, was a surprising result of the surveys that I checked out. We need meaning. And why? Why is that? Why are people feeling this desire for meaning? I think practically maybe because our freedom has been taken away, we've lost sources of meaning. We can't hang out with each other, which is one way we get meaning. We can't go to museums or theaters. I sound very highbrow there, I'm not really. But these sources of meaning have been taken away from us. But I also think it's deeper. I think meaning is important for tough times. It gets us through tough times. Viktor Frankl wrote the classic work, Man's Search for Meaning. Frankl was an Austrian psychiatrist, and he, during the war, was sent to Auschwitz. And he was there having already trained as a psychiatrist, so he observed his fellow detainees in Auschwitz, and he wrote about his experience afterwards, observing them. And he found that even in Auschwitz, a purpose-built death camp, he found that some people could find meaning. Now, it was small bits of meaning, helping other people just survive the day. But the prisoners who found meaning, he thought, were the ones who had the strength to endure the death camp. Meaning is actually crucial for the days in which we live. Okay, so if you're with me on those three themes, practically, what can we do as we turn to that side? Well, with freedom, taking that first in the same order, freedom, we can't change the restrictions. You or I can't do much about that. We just sort of have to wait to get our freedoms back. But how do we wait without these freedoms? I think there's a few things we could do. Number one, actually gratitude. Practice gratitude. If we sit back, gain some perspective, actually the key personal freedoms of believing what you want to believe, of listening who you want to listen to, of just being able to eat what you want to eat, we still have those things. They haven't been taken away. Let's reflect on that and be grateful. And secondly, let's actually reflect on how we've used our freedoms in the past. We're now so conscious of not having freedom. What did we do when we could have gone anywhere we wanted to, at any time we wanted to? Did we do all these amazing things? Or did people just go to Penny's to buy something they didn't actually need? So I think let's use those two things, gratitude and then reflection. With community, I think community is the key one. So let me be clear on this. Number one, fight for your community. Fight for relationships. Fight to maintain whatever contact you can these days. We all need it. We need relationship. So phone people, text people, WhatsApp people, Zoom people, email, write. If you haven't written in years a card or a postcard or whatever, write to people. Just do what you can to make contact with other people. Go outside your front door and talk to your neighbors. Go for a walk around your streets and just smile and say hello to passers-by you don't even know. And I bet you they will smile or say hello back, obviously from two distance apart. But do that. We need that. Secondly, I would say work on the depth as well as the breadth of your relationships. Now, our breadth of relationships, how many people we're in contact with on a weekly basis, has undoubtedly shrunk. And I miss that. I miss going into my office job and having banter and all of that. But we need depth, particularly in these times. We need to be open and honest and talk about how we're feeling, because there's times we're not doing so well. So let's do that. Let's have deep conversations with people. And thirdly, even the times when you don't really feel like you need community, be community to others, because as a society, we need it now. So that's community. Meaning. With meaning, one big point is we need to find other sources of meaning. And so much of the meaning that we get day to day has been stripped from us. If you get meaning in consumerism, you can't go to the shops like you used to want to. Just go online. If you find meaning in just having the crack, then you can't go to pubs and restaurants and meet with people. If you find meaning in adventure, then you can't go traveling like you had planned or wanted to. So we have to find meaning. Let me give you 3 thoughts. There's lots of ways you can find simple everyday meaning. Beauty. I know lots of people who are reawakening to their love of nature. On the news a week or 2 ago, Birdwatch Ireland said they had 2,000 new members in the last year. Beauty does something to us, something inside us that gives us meaning. And likewise, art does something to us, speaks to our inner selves. So go pick a good book, go listen to some new music, enjoy art. And the last word is creativity. Just go make something. Gardening, cooking, art itself, whatever it might be, go do something like that. And I think don't be afraid to keep thinking and asking questions about life. When the ancients searched for the good life or a life worth living, that included asking questions. They weren't afraid doing it. And for me, living through the pandemic and the lessons that I've seen from it, it means asking the question, these 3 tanks of community, meaning and freedom, how well balanced are they in our lives? And have we fallen into this Western trap of concentrating so much on freedom? Now, the practical answer to that is to adjust our lives, to pull one lever down and push another lever up and just readjust the balance and get a healthier balance between those 3 tanks in our lives. And I think that's worth exploring. That's worth doing that. It's important that we have all 3. But I wonder, what if there's actually something deeper out there for us? What if there's an answer within? What if it's possible that there's a freedom out there that doesn't actually compete with meaning and community? What if there's a freedom that is not just about personal choice and me getting my way? A freedom that is divorced by the me, myself, and I mentality of our age. See, that would actually be a freedom to be, to just simply be in the lives of other people and have true community, to just live with them and serve them and love them, a freedom to be and not just to get. But also what that would do is that would decenter ourselves from the preoccupation we have with ourselves and our own lives. And if we do that, it frees us up to find meaning outside of ourselves, meaning in the world, meaning in beauty, in justice, in other things. I think we've got to search for that freedom. Is that possible? And for me, this is where faith has come to help me. Because what we're talking about here is personal change. And if you've watched Operation Transformation or any reality show, personal change is always the hardest change to get. And this is inner heart change. But here, faith has been great for me during the pandemic. And it's not just that it gives me a relationship with a God who himself gives me community during tough times, or that it gives me meaning because it points to a future world and I then get hope through that. It's also this sense of something deeper, of freedom, a freedom that is a freedom in some ways from just a focus on myself. Because at the heart of faith is a devotion to God, to a living supreme being. And what that does is that knocks ourselves off number 1. Now, on one level, that's not what you want to hear. That goes against our Western world. But actually, that is the great freedom to have that. Because that's the freedom which enables us to look beyond ourselves, find meaning beyond ourselves, to actually be in community where we're not just thinking what I can get from this, but just enjoying other people as they are. That's what we really need. That's a freedom that fits with community and meaning and helps us provide and receive those 2 things. You see, I believe that this God changes us, that as we spend time with this God, whoever you spend time with in life influences you and changes you. And as we follow the ways of this God, we will be changed bit by bit from the inside out, our values, our hearts, our affections, our desires. And we can step into this freedom. And that's a freedom that sits well with community and with meaning. I think that's the freedom that we really crave. So look, let me pause there for this evening. Thank you for listening.
Thank you, Fraser. A lot of food for thought there for all of us, I think. Keep your questions coming in. There are some questions and comments, so thank you. I'm now going to hand over to Rory. Rory O'Sullivan, he's a young man employed by a bank, and he's been working from home since March 2020. So Rory, you have a story you want to share with us.
Thank you, Gladys. So my name is Rory, and as Gladys said, I've been working remotely since March 2020. I started the role in September 2019, so I had around 6 months to get used to it, which was great because I've been able to work somewhat independently as a result. But I definitely miss the office. I think Fraser used the word banter, which is a Southside word, but I miss having the chats with friends and being able to go for lunch and learn on the job. But at the same time, I'm very grateful that I still have a job and I'm able to work. And I think even more than the things that work is great for, having a salary and having challenges, I've really found the structure beneficial. To have to get up at 8 every morning and to have to go to sleep by 11 or 12 is definitely something I wouldn't do if it wasn't for that structure. So I think having the structure of work and work itself have been very beneficial to me during lockdown. Another thing that Fraser touched on was community. For me, one thing I found great has been meeting with friends, be that mostly online, but some of my friends live within 5K, so being able to meet in person has been great too. I live at home. I live with 6 other people, so things can get tense. It's mostly good, but regularly enough, things get pretty tense. And there's a clash of who we think has priority for the Wi-Fi tonight. So tonight it was me there inside on the data, but I got to be on the Wi-Fi. But yeah, having those conversations with friends, being able to meet up with people outside of the house, be that even in their bedroom, but my mind is no longer in the house. That's been great to kind of take me away and to remind me of other people, to think about other people. It's definitely something I'm not natural at. I wouldn't naturally be like, let's meet up for a chat if it wasn't for an event. I'm not good at that, but that kind of necessity to have to just meet up for nothing else than meeting up has been great. And it's something that's really benefited me, I think, during periods of lockdown. And I started exercising again. I was very reluctant. I managed to tell myself from March until September that I'd start next week. And next week came in a dark October. But it came eventually. And I think having that kind of outlet to go for a run or go for a walk, get away from the screen for a little bit has been great, and justifies the dessert I'm going to eat either way. So exercising is another thing I found very beneficial. Finally, the church community for me has been a great support, has been vital, especially during periods of lockdown. I think for me, my faith is very important, and being able to meet on Sunday every week, albeit online, has been great. So we do meet online. We don't have physical service. We've had one, I think, since March. But I think other good things have come out of it, which I was surprised about. Getting to know people more intimately as a result of different sharing slots that have gone on in church has been great. I also attend a young adults group as part of the church. These are around 20, 22. Well, I'm 22, so early 20s. And the conversations are great. I think it's a great source of, to actually have a real conversation, get deep, read scripture. This is just a great support. But the only thing I find annoying is I think Fraser, Richard Branson would like to be on this call because I'm Virgin Media as well. And I think it feels like we're always the one whose Wi-Fi goes. But besides that, the conversations, it's amazing how quick we've adjusted to talking online. So yeah, those are some of the things I found to be beneficial and helped me during periods of lockdown.
Great, thanks, Rory, and thanks for your honesty in sharing some of those things. Really appreciate that. And now I'm going to introduce Joan to you. Joan Singleton, she teaches at 3rd level in a Christian college, and she also teaches and gives talks to churches and community groups in pastoral care. So over to you, Joan.
Thanks, Gladys, and thanks, Rory. It's good to have two inputs, isn't it? One from a younger person and then one from an older person. So you get both perspectives. I think the first thing I'd like to say is I'm alive. That might seem very odd, but I'm living. And I think, to use Fraser's phrase, the thing that struck me when I look back now to last March and into the summer was it was like clinging to a log. I wasn't exactly enduring every day, but I was really wishing it away. I just was getting through. I wanted it to be past. I wanted to get back to normal. And I think the thing that has changed for me and has really helped me is that I'm living in these days, and to actually face it, and to face this is the situation that we're living under. And also to be aware that I'm just learning so much. One of the things I've learned about myself is that it's a bit like, you know, when you say don't walk in the grass and don't touch the wet paint, it's the very thing you want to do. Well, I realized that part of me wanting to do things was because I was told I couldn't. That has taught me much about myself, because I really have missed seeing people face to face and being able to go into college and teach the students face to face and see friends when I wanted to and all of that. But I am learning a lot. And one of the things that I'm learning is that God is with me even in these days, and that he cares, and that it's possible to still know him and actually get to know him better in these difficult days. I've also learned other things about myself, and Fraser mentioned one of them. And that was that looking back now at my life, there were times when there was something difficult in my life or something that I didn't want to face. And I would go shopping and buy something just to make me feel better. Now, just in case my husband's listening to this, going shopping and buying new things is not a bad thing. And it's a good thing to do. But I do know that at times it was just pure avoidance of things that I actually needed to face. One of the other things I've learned is to live today and not think too far ahead. As somebody said at Grace for today, and of aims for today, for this week, I'm teaching from home, teaching on Zoom. And one of the things I find has really helped me is to treat it as though I'm with the people, that the students are there, they're with me, so much so that sometimes when I leave this desk, I wonder where everybody has gone, because they were here, they were actually here with me, and suddenly they're not in the room anymore. And I think that matters to make it as real as possible. Exercise has been important, going for walks has been important. And I'm so glad that none of you can see me in the mornings when I've been using YouTube exercises. And there's lots on there for seniors. And there's even dancing for seniors that a friend in Thurles told me about. And I'm so glad that nobody can see me jigging around this room. But it's good. And it's been good for me to do that. The other thing I did was last, I think, April, I paid for e-cards. And I've really enjoyed that, just sending e-cards to people. You can still do that. I'm baking and cooking, which I enjoy, and planning for all the people who are going to eat the stuff when I can have visitors back in our home. But the other thing that really matters and that has really helped me is having a few people that I can be really honest with and can actually say, look, I'm finding this hard, and have a bit of a moan, and that they don't immediately say, but you know, Joan, there's so many people worse off than you. I know that. I know it. And we all know it. But at times we just need to be able to be honest and say, this is tough and I'm finding this hard. So thing that has really helped me, as I said before, is to accept that this is how it is for now. It's not going to last. I'm still able to live. I'm still able to live and know God better. But I don't want to miss the opportunity of things that I'm learning about myself. And the other thing is you need to laugh. You need to find things that make you laugh. And I'm grateful for all the people who've sent me all those funny little videos that actually are good. So these are difficult days. There's ways, as Fraser said, in community that we can really help each other. And it's important that we do that. But I think for me, the thing is to live today. And I don't want actually to go back. I hope I will go forward, having learnt stuff through these difficult days. So that's just me for now. Thanks.
Thanks, Joan, as well. And thanks for making us laugh. My mind is boggling with the thought of you doing these early morning exercises on YouTube. Very honest to admit that. Okay, guys. We've been getting quite a few questions in, so thank you. And please keep sending them in as they come to you. We're going to move to our Q&A panel, and the panel will be made up of Joan, Rory and Fraser. Okay, so I'm going to start, just give me a moment, with the first question. And I'm just going to ask the panel this particular question, and we'll see who wants to answer it. Is it only those 3 tanks or buckets that matter? I'm assuming, having said that probably Fraser, you're the best one to answer this. So I'm backtracking on what I've just said. Over to you.
I like the phrase buckets, 3 buckets. No, I don't think I'm saying that. I think they were probably the key things, you know, freedom, community, and meaning. And it's important to think through those 3 things, because they are key. But I think there's lots of things out there. I mean, that's why it's been great actually to listen to Rory and to Joan and their stories that they've, you know, Rory mentioned structure, Joan mentioned exercise. Some of those things you probably couldn't fit or group into one of those tanks. So I think they're sort of the key things, but there's lots of other things like exercise, structure, laughter, that are important too. So yeah, so it's not everything.
Great. Thanks, Fraser. I hope that's answered that question. The second one is, I hear lots of those points, but it's still really a struggle to keep going. Who would like to answer that? Joan, I'll hand to you.
I would just say, as I said before, really, that go and talk to somebody. Don't struggle alone. Find somebody you can talk to. And if actually at the minute you feel you don't have somebody to talk to, then there are groups you can phone. There are the Samaritans or whatever. But be honest, because often what happens is if you open up to somebody and say, I'm struggling, to say, it's almost as though they heave a sigh of relief and say, oh, thank you, because I am too, and I didn't know who I could say to. So these days are tough. Don't feel bad about feeling bad, if that makes sense, because that only makes it feel worse. And the other thing is, don't make big decisions about life when you're feeling bad. Somebody told me that years ago, and I find that really helpful. It's not a good time to make decisions about, is life worth living? Is life good when you're feeling really bad? You can't make a decision like that when you're feeling rotten. Things will change. Circumstances are changing. Our feelings also change, and they can go up and down a bit. But I would say, if you're finding the days really tough, find somebody to talk to. Please do.
Rory, I see you would like to say something as well.
I think for me, it would be a bit like Joan, especially the more I've talked to friends, even like, because you have less to talk about, the more you can actually at times have a maybe more in-depth conversation. I remember even in college when we walk out of a lecture, it's like Joan, you were saying about that moment when I found that really boring, and you look at each other and it's like, me too. It's a bit like that with the struggle thing for me anyway. I find like, if you find this tough, probably people are too, and even spending time with friends, like there's not much to talk about, and when you get to that level, sometimes it can be good, I found anyway. So.
Great, thanks, Rory. Oh, and Fraser.
I have one thought too. Just Rory mentioned structure was important for him, and the job provided that. And I might use the word routine for the same point. Is that, you know, lots of the things that we talked about. Well, first I agree with Joan and Rory, talk to someone, but lots of the things that we talked about, if you get them in a routine and just sort of build them in, you'll find it begins to make things different. So I had a routine of taking the dog and the kids for a walk after dinner every evening, and that's, it might seem a very simple thing, we don't go very far, but it's fresh air, it's exercise, clears the head, it's time with the kids, it's lots of things, and it's really good. And then I've added in just very recently doing the same at lunchtime. which I've talked about probably for like 2 months, because I'm only getting outside some days in the dark, and I would like to get outside when the sun, well, not necessarily sun shining, but there's some sort of sunlight somewhere in the sky. And so it's actually a routine for me that if that happens every tea time or after every lunchtime, then it's in.
Great, thanks guys. That's a great question. Got you all wanting to answer that. Right, I'm just seeing another question, probably for Fraser. And you may have already answered this, but I'm still going to ask you this, Fraser, as it came in. Are you saying freedom, community, and meaning should be in equal balance? And aren't these hard to measure within ourselves?
That's a really good question. And I'm not sure how I would measure them. I don't know that any of them are things that you can measure like that. You could have community, you think maybe is the easiest to measure, but how many friends on Facebook doesn't really tell you much about the depth of your relationships. So I think yeah, it's very hard to measure. I think equal balance doesn't mean, I'm not saying they all have to be, a third, in that way. They don't all have to be the same level. I think it's if one gets out of kilter that, you need to just be careful for that. And if there's a big gap there, you can't really function well, I think, and have a fulfilling life if one of those is particularly missing. And I think what's intriguing for me is that in the Western world, we have emphasized one over the other. And part of what the lockdown, I think, is teaching us, what I think is probably clear, and I think it has been an Irish strength, we talk of mehel, this Irish sense of community and people helping each other, and, people helping older people on the street to get groceries or medicine and stuff. We've seen the importance of community. So maybe we haven't fully gone down that road in Ireland. But the point is, don't let things get completely out of kilter and one take over from the other. I'm not saying this be exactly the same or how you measure them. Someone better than me might be able to answer that, but not me.
That's great, Fraser. Thank you. I'll move on to another question. How can we learn to live in the moment rather than waiting for things to change or get back to normal? Would anyone like to answer this? Joan, I'll hand over to you. Thanks.
As I kind of said earlier, that's something I've really struggled with. And I realized that a lot of us cope with difficulties by looking forward to something. Like some of you are maybe looking forward to your cup of tea or coffee when this is over at 9 o'clock, or something you're going to do on Saturday. A lot of people live by looking forward to weekends away or holidays away or whatever. And I think it is a change of mind and a change of thinking to actually try and enjoy today. I remember saying that to our children, don't wish your life away. Try and enjoy today because you'll be old soon enough. And I think it's not easy, but I think it is a change of mindset to look for the good in today and finding something in today to be thankful for, even little things, and trying, just to control our minds and not think too far ahead.
Yeah, I just scribbled down 2 words in answer to that. Gratitude, which is similar to Joan, and just that sense of, I guess when life is difficult, the things you're missing is really obvious. You don't have to think about them or search for them. It's just there in front of you. And so you have to actually nearly purposely sit back in some way and think, what do I want to give thanks for? What has been good today? And it literally might just be the meal that you ate, or something simple, but you nearly have to practice that, force ourselves to practice it. So gratitude. And then the second word I had was meditation, which for me, I guess is related to my faith, but it's just taking time to pause. It might be as just 10 minutes in the day, but just to pause, to be still. And I guess it just regains perspective for me. I re-enter into a bigger story of the world, what God's doing in the world, and not just me holed up in my home office, homeschooling, etc., etc. So yeah, gratitude and meditation.
Great, thank you. Great answers there. Right, the next question, I think it's a bit of a cracker. Did God send COVID? Who would like to tackle that one?
Well, I'd like to say no. I'm not sure what else I'm going to say, but I would be distinctly of the view that it's a no. But I know that the twin question to that. Let me say why I say it's a no. Because the God that I believe in is revealed to us in Jesus. So God entered into this world as a person in Jesus, and that means we have first-hand accounts of what God is like. We can see what he does and how he acts. And in Jesus, God came healing people, not giving them disease. So that to me is clear. But I know the twin question of did God send COVID or why did God allow COVID? And that gets us a little bit trickier, a bit harder ground. But I think the Christian faith doesn't pretend that we live in a perfect world. It believes that the world is both good and bad, and that it's a mixture because it was created good, but it fell into disrepair. And therefore, we're sort of stuck in where there's this mixture of good and bad, this mixture of triumph and tragedy. And that just is the world. And that's the world for everyone, whether you believe in God or you don't believe in God or you're not sure. And so actually the question becomes, how do you live and sustain yourself in this world? And I think what the Christian faith gives me in that is the sense that God promises to be with me even in the bad when things are tough. That Jesus entered into a bad world and took on frailty and flesh, and that God is changing this world to make it better. We're not there yet by any means, but that is the plan.
Thanks, Fraser. Joan, Rory, no pressure, but would either of you like to say anything? Otherwise, I'll move on. Okay, thanks, Fraser. Very brave. I'll move on to the next question. You say community is important, but do we really have community these days? Before lockdowns, people generally didn't know their neighbours or those who lived around them. So if community is so important, why isn't it easier to find or do? I think that's a good question, very pertinent. Who would like to answer that? Okay, Joan, I'll leave it with you.
It's been a strange kind of a thing. And as I said, it took me a while to kind of get my head around it. I have been on Zoom in the past month with two good friends, one of them from 20 years ago. And I have actually reconnected with some people on Zoom. I've had a lot of good conversations on Zoom. And actually, I've got to know my neighbours much better than I did. I would have known the immediate neighbours, but I've got to know the others. And as Fraser said, out walking, because you see the same people, same time, and having those socially distanced conversations. So actually, I feel, I miss so many people that I can't see. But I actually feel, Rory said earlier about church community, and I feel very connected to church community through all this. But I feel connected to community where I live now more so. And I also feel connected to community where I work. So actually, yeah, it's different. But it takes a bit of effort. I think one of the things I've learned is on a day when I was doing a bit of poor Joan, feeling a bit lonely and isolated, and almost feeling God saying to me, well, what are you going to do about it? Wait until the phone rings or phone somebody. In that sense, it has taken a bit of effort to actually make the move to contact somebody, but it's been worth it. So that's a bit of, sorry, I'm rambling now, so I'll stop.
part of me wants to defer to Joan on that, and she made some good practical points. I do think there's something culturally where, you know, in the West, by and large, there's a famous book called Bowling Alone, by a guy, Robert Putnam, an American sociologist. If you like politics, you'll remember that Bertie used to talk about it and start something. I'm just showing my age here. But he was looking, it was an American context, as we're getting into this late stage capitalism, whatever you want to call it, people's social connections, like who they went bowling with, or these sort of community voluntary things, be it sports teams or tidy towns or whatever it was, they were decreasing. And I think there has been that in Ireland as well, that as we lead busier lives and work longer hours, and people, I think community has gone down a bit. I think we still have some of it. I don't think we've lost it all. But that is part of it. We're certainly busier. That has an impact. And I also think community, we all want community, as in we want friends in the crack, but do we all want to be community? Do we actually want to step out? Because it requires initiative, it requires commitment, it requires talking to people, and I'm not sure that we want that. And so I do think there's a competing thing here between how we talk of freedom and community, because the deeper relationships we have in life they become healthy relationships and good relationships through sacrificing freedom. You know, think of marriage, or think of parenting, think of close friends. You know, the friends, I have some close friends now who at this I hardly see, you know, once a year at all, but we're good friends because we've been through stuff together, and they were there when things were difficult, or, you know, so I think there's something there for us to reflect on as well about freedom versus community.
Great, thank you. I'll move on to another. This is quite an interesting comment stroke question. My lockdown story has been relatively easy compared to some, and I've been coping fairly well within the restrictions. I live near some nice parks, or I wish I did. So does God actually care about me and my situation when really I'm just bored and there are others who must be higher up the priority list? It's quite an intriguing one there for you guys. Who would like to start that one? Or... Sorry, thank you, Joan.
The amazing and wonderful thing is that God cares when we're bored. I hope that doesn't sound flippant, because it isn't. Because the amazing thing to me is that God cares about me, and he's caring about millions of people, and he's caring about people in hospital and people in intensive care and people in the world who are starving, and yet he cares about every single one of us. That's incredible, but it's true. So God cares, and it's that balance between feeling, because we can just feel guilt, oh, my life isn't as bad as other people's, but to rejoice in the good things that we have and to care. And for me as a Christian, to pray for those who are really struggling. But just, I think it's the most wonderful thing in the world to know that God cares for every single human being and cares for how we're feeling. I just think that's amazing.
Thanks, Joan. Anyone else? Otherwise I can move on, no pressure. Okay, I've got another question here. Oh, this is another good one. Isn't Christianity's freedom just more restrictions we have to follow? You're really being made to think tonight. Who would like to start off with that one?
It's just more restrictions. It was a question. Could you repeat it, sorry?
Sorry, Fraser, yeah. Isn't Christianity's freedom just more restrictions we have to follow?
I think that's a really good question, and I think that has been a lot of people's experience of Christianity, of how they have experienced it through the church or through religion. But I don't think that was what Jesus himself was offering or speaking about. But yet, you know, in Ireland, our experience of church and religion was so prevalent and mixed for people that it's a real thing. And I think, you know, there's a side to the teachings of Jesus of obeying them, where if they are taught to you or foisted upon you, but you've never really believed in them yourself, and you're just sort of made do them through, you know, externally, then for some maybe they felt like that. But I think when it's accompanied by an experience of Jesus himself and the fact that he longs for our good, then I think it leads to a different experience. Because an experience of Jesus, it's not just a teaching that's foisted upon us, it's actually a person and a relationship. And in that relationship, as it develops, as you gain respect and love and trust, then you, bit by bit, you start to follow their way. And I think, you know, as part of the trust element of that, you see that actually there are even some things I asked to follow here that feel like restrictions that I don't want to do. But I'm going to trust that somehow these are good for me. And maybe in time, as we go down that path, we'll see that. Because, you know, the thing of life, not just of faith, but all of life, is that we're formed by our habits. So the things that we do day by day begin to change us. And actually, if these teachings are good, even if they don't feel good at the start, so it might be, you know, something classic about how we treat other people, you know, or love your enemies, sounds like an awful burden. How could you love your enemies? They really just deserve a kicking or something like that. But if we become people who practice that habit, what happens to us on the inside over time? You know, our character changes, and suddenly we become people who are humble, who are loving, who are hospitable, in the true meaning of that word. So I think habits lead to character for all of us, and maybe that's a window in. But I'm rambling now as well.
Thank you, Fraser. Give the other two, would you like the opportunity to say anything? No, again, no pressure, that's fine. Thanks, Fraser. I'm going to make this the last one. It's sort of a comment, and it will be interesting to hear your views. I'll just read this out. I've got this. This is not a question, but my view is the majority of people won't have changed. The selfish society we live in will continue. Obviously, a few people will change, but again, some of them will maybe be selfish in their change. Moving out of the city, taking a house that a poor rural couple couldn't afford, I don't notice people out at 8 p.m. cheering the frontline workers during the winter. In the warm spring and summer, it was something to do. So it's more a comment from someone. Do any of you want to say anything about the selfishness of people? I think it's really, and that people won't really change. Anyone like to just add a comment on that?
I think there's truth to the statement, to the comment. I think it's astute in some ways. I think what it shows us again is the difficulty of change, of actually changing who we are, our character, our behavior from the inside is hard. I think that's important to note. And I think it ties into a little bit of what we talked about freedom. Freedom is a great thing, and we all long for it and yearn for it in some ways. But if alongside that we live in a society which is dominated by me, myself, and I, then actually freedom can descend into that selfishness, and that's an issue for us. And so a true freedom, if we could find it, would be a freedom to actually change and to become less selfish people, to follow a different path and be different people. That would be real freedom.
Great, thank you, Fraser. Right, last opportunity for Joan or Rory. Joan, do you want to say something?
Just very briefly, I think, yeah, as Fraser said, change needs to come from the inside out. And I think I would say that God can change us from the inside out and can make us less selfish. Will Ireland change? I don't know, is the answer. But I do think, and this is just a very practical thing, I think we need to write down some things to remind ourselves. You know, things I've thought about, ways I want to change. I've written some of those down, because there is a danger of just going back to normal, which I don't want to. So that's the very kind of practical side. But as Fraser said, God can change us and make us less selfish.
That's great. Well, thank you, everyone. We're going to close in the next couple of minutes. It's been a great evening. Thank you to the panel. Really appreciate each of you taking the time to prepare and answer questions on the spot. Thank you to everyone who's been watching. And for those of you who've, again, taken the time and trouble to send your questions and comments into us, we've really appreciated that. If you find that you've got any more questions after, we've said goodbye, please feel free to stay in touch either via Facebook or email us. The details will come up on a slide once we say goodbye. So don't sort of log out straight away. Just wait to read the details. Also want to say, given the nature of the subject tonight, if there's anything that struck you or impacted you, if you feel alone or isolated, need someone to talk to, then again, please message us via Facebook, and we'd be very happy to respond individually to you, all in confidence. So please don't go away still in need or think, I really am desperate, I want to talk to someone. We are available. And I want to finish by saying we will be running another webinar in this series, but as yet we've got no date or topic yet decided. But if you would like to get updates on this or anything else, again, just like our Facebook page. So we'll have your details and we can let you know. And I think that's it, everyone. Thanks for a great evening. I think we've enjoyed it, so I hope you have as well. And thanks for joining us, and continue to take care of yourselves and keep safe. Good night. See you again soon. Bye.